We've all seen a lot of nice stuff today, right? From software creating automatically thousands of options for us, which actually would eliminate an old-fashioned way to use Architect for that purpose, through augmented reality and virtual reality to cloud collaboration and all similar great technologies. Sadly, I will need to bring you a bit down to the ground from those clouds. And the situation on the ground is that most companies in Hong Kong are using an old-fashioned last century CAD way of doing their projects. We need to face it no matter we like it or not, and we don't like it. And even if they do use BIM, they outsource it to so-called BIM consultants. They hire someone to do it for them because they don't know how. And even if they do use it in-house, they have this strange parallel way of doing design in CAD and then having a fresh graduate or even a technician to build a BIM model in parallel, doing the same work twice. Why is it happening? Some people say that this is partly to Hong Kong culture, which may play a role, but I think the reason is different. BIM software, Revit, in our case, is difficult to use. That's the case when you ask most of the architects. And even more difficult it is to customize. And we all need customization for local code, our office practice, and so on. So is it anything we can do for that? Definitely yes. And this is creating standards. Standards. Okay, thank you. Well, we need to ask first, what is a Revit standard? Well, a Revit standard is an integrated system of combining procedures, predefined settings, and component files. I call it a Revit system, system being something that is created and works, whether standards is a system which is adopted by, for many different projects or across the board within, say, Hong Kong. That would be great. So now what are the procedures? Procedures include naming conventions, model setup and management, how to model things, and how to manage this model later. Ways to design, model, and analyze the model, data validation, deliverables and production, and archiving. So the whole process. Things that are descriptive come under procedures. Then predefined settings is all that we can do before we even start our projects to simplify the workflow. So views, sheets, filters, schedules, predefined. Projects parameters, worksets, workset structure and naming. Browser organization schemes, color schemes, area schemes, line, text, dimension styles, DWG Expert Setups. And component files, which include system families, component families, obviously, shared parameters, keynote lists, materials and assets, textures, and patterns. I'm talking about the external PAT files, not the patterns which you can create in Revit, which are limited, to say the least. Now, the procedure part goes into the procedure part, yes, goes into a document. It's a book of standards where procedures are described in words and using images. The predefined settings go to a project template file, which is one of the most important parts of the standard. And the component files go to libraries, which in turn include a lot of stuff like families, shared parameters, basically all what is shown here. The laser is not working well. Now, this Revit standard has to fulfill many other conditions. It has to enable Revit application according to Hong Kong practice and regulations, because we are talking about standard in Hong Kong. And that has to be done for various disciplines at the same time. I mean, one standard. And for different, actually all project stages: conceptual, schematic, detailed, statutory, tender construction. This also needs to, the standard needs to use BIM as the only source of data, which was mentioned many times today, and it's of course true. Only source of data and deliverables, and should assume no CAD post-production. No, that's a no. Now, you may think, why we need this whole Revit system for statutory submission? This is because statutory submission is just a part of the entire design process, and we want our Revit model, BIM model, Revit model, to serve our entire design process. So apart from statutory submission, we have a lot of deliverables that we need to produce out of our model. Concept plan sections, schematic renderings, statutory submission, obviously, tender submission. At any given time, a lot of working drawings for meetings with clients, drawings, 3D views, renderings, calculations, amended statutory submission, an important thing, and construction documentation. The fact that we need to have the ability to produce statutory submission more than once during the design process, and it can be more, it can be amended, first amendment, second amendment, means that we cannot just produce statutory submission with all the settings and forget about it. We need to keep this availability of statutory submission generation all the time during our project. Now, because we need all those different deliverables, which in very basic sense translates to different types of plans, we need standardized naming. It will be, I will show just one case, one sample of what, of a standard for naming. This will be standard naming for floor plans. But in Revit, you can actually, you can and should standardize any naming, and there is a lot of name. So the basic criterion for naming standard is a drawing purpose. We've identified basically 5 reasons why you may produce drawings. It's presentation, coordination, government submission, construction, and working. Working is your everyday working plan, drawing, and environment. Now, they are not necessary all the time during the design process. Presentation actually is. That's the one that you need from the very beginning to the very end. Coordination, probably like producing plans for other disciplines, probably starts about schematic. Government, about detailed design when you do your first submission. Then construction is around tender. And working, you need all the time as well. Corresponding to this are names. So we call the plan, the presentation type of plan with the PRE part field in the name. Then CRD for coordination, government, construction, and this third one, which is actually a personal working plan, or an example of personal working plan, which is intentionally written with small letters so that you can differentiate it very easily in the project browser in Revit. Now this results in a naming pattern of something like this, that this looks maybe a little bit cryptic, but those are just fields of a name pattern with the contents of this being discipline, architecture, structure, electrical, and so on. Then the purpose, which you just saw before. Set, it's a name of drawing set, is an optional thing, which further describes a set of plan, because you may need more than just purpose. And then a drawing name, like floor 1, floor 2, ground floor, and so on. On a sample from Revit project browser, it looks like this. And the example where you need a set, another field will be, for example, construction demolition, however contradictory it sounds. Then you will have this kind of laser. This kind of arccon DEM and then a floor, a respective floor name result. So we have we've shown how statutory submission settings affect naming conventions. Those are the samples of drawings that we need, different drawings with different graphic layouts that we need in our design. So that's presentation, coordination, a pretty plain plan. Those are another type of coordination for those unlucky friends of us which still work in CAD. Then government, finally. So that's for Fire Services Department. To achieve a result like that, we need to standardize our model setup and management to basically build all this. Then have predefined views, which will be responsible for these graphic layouts looking like that. Views include, obviously, viewing templates, one of the most important things. Component families, all those things are component families which behave in a certain way when they are treated by a certain view template. Basically display the orange background. And filters, which need to be applied to a view to result in such behavior. Now for the GBP, standard GBP submission with colors, we need more than that, sheets. Why sheets? Because in Revit, to achieve, see like on this blue walls pattern over color, you need quite a lot of gymnastics, and that is overlapping plans, two views or more sometimes on one sheet. That's why we need a predefined configuration of sheets and views on them already in our standard. You need shared parameters. Basically, in this case, we use shared parameters for those symbols. I mean the contents of the door marks, and patterns, PAT files for patterns of walls. This pattern is simple, but we have more complex patterns when we show different fire ratings of walls. So for this, you need PAT files. And deliverables and productions to actually make a PDF out of it, which will look exactly as on the screen, which is easier said than done in Revit, because normally when you export this to PDF, you will lose it, believe it or not. And archiving, after we successfully submit our BD, we need to keep it because we will need it in future. And there's also a construction drawing, and having all these different kinds of plans in the same Revit file, we need browser organization schemes in order to keep some order in our project browser, so that we don't see all those hundreds sometimes of drawings at the same time, but only what we need in a given project stage that we are in. Now, there's more. Condition number 3, first being the different stages, second being different types of plans. Condition number 3, we need a customized system of categorizing walls. which follows this one, the ADM9, because the way walls are categorized here is nothing similar to what it is hard-coded in Revit. So for that purpose, we are using system family, which is called fire rating. System family, which is wall, and the property of this system family called fire rating, which has nothing to do with categorizing walls, but is the only property which can actually be used later in DWG setups, which I show on one of further slides. So for now, the fire rating property is a text property, which is good. We can give it any name, following the ADM9 table, as you see on this screenshot. And then, based on this, we can create view templates applying respective colors to the walls. Bear in mind that one of the objectives of this is to not use any materials for any of these settings, because materials will change throughout the project, and we want it for various purposes like renderings, and they cannot be affected by any of those settings. Materials have to be, real Revit materials have to be independent. Now, we also would like to export our walls to DWG, as I said, to those unlucky friends which still need it, and put walls into different layers in the exported Revit file. So that's, for this purpose, we will need DWG Expert Setups. And now it comes, the reason why we're using fire rating is because it's the only property which can be used as a modifier in DWG Expert Setups. So using this, we can assign particular layers to particular wall types, which we identified using our custom designed categorizing system, and then have them placed on proper layers while exported to AutoCAD. Now, those coloring requirements have to be satisfied not only for the first submission, but for the second submission. So we need to, as in the first submission, we need to color all the objects. In the subsequent ones, we need to color only those which are changed. Which means we need a project parameter, in this case called BD color, which is on for first submission, but will be off for the second submission, as you can see on the example of this metal slab at the top right corner of the screenshot. So you already see how many of those components of the Revit standard are influenced, or we have to take into account for the statutory submission. Now, elevations. So we need these walls, which are dark green in plan, to look, because they are plastered, to look suddenly yellow on elevation. So for this, we use naming conventions, because our walls can have some component which then is detected by a filter, like PLA for plaster, and then applies the correct coloring on the plan, on the elevation. It's all automatic if you have the standard in place and you use it properly. For the condition number 6, the UFA polygons have to be created automatically using rooms bound by internal faces of walls without finishes. That's pretty straightforward. Somebody already mentioned this today. But for that, we need to have our color schemes predefined, although this is white, but you still need a color scheme for that. And schedules, which are responsible for listing out all the GFA areas of a given floor. So those schedules like that are also predefined in a Revit standard. In case of GFAs, we use area schemes. That's another part of the Revit standard, another component of the Revit standard, and obviously schedules as well. All those polygons need to be exported to CAD files as closed polylines and placed on a specifically named correct layers as per ADM 19 and LD practice note, whatever. Well, for this purpose, we need to employ worksets, another functionality of Revit. Worksets can be used as modifiers in DWG setups, and then by placing respective types of GFA area plans or rooms on respective layers, worksets, which are named just like in this last frame, we can place them on the correctly named layers when exported to DWG, as per statutory requirements. This is all done without any plugins. Plugins help, but a lot of this can be done just by setting Revit properly and having a proper standard. So, and all this results in a DWG Expert Setup, which is named, for example, floor plan BD. That's for building department. The other one would be LD for lands department. Now, calculations, condition number 9, have to be done according to different precisions, to 0 decimal places for staircases, for discharge values of required staircases, areas for UFA, but up to the 3 decimal places for GFA areas, as we well know. So for this, we need predefined schedules. Also, for the look of all those schedules, setting it up, it's a lot of time, and if it's part of our standard, it speeds up the process enormously. Now, obviously, all the schedules and calculations cannot be typed manually. They have to be linked, like this site area or site coverage calculations have to be linked to real objects in your model, like this site boundary. For that, we use shared parameters for all those values like site area or site coverage. And similar in case of EVA served facade length, it also needs to be linked to a real facade length. So when you change the line here, this is actually done with in-place generic family, then the calculation of the length of the EVA served facade will change automatically. Well, that's the 10 conditions that just touch the surface of the problem. Well, is it all? No. What about other families, which external component families which we use in statutory submission? Doors, window walls, drainage channels, railings, fire shutters, plumbing fixtures, room tags, spot elevations. Graphic settings and parameters. Yes, they need to be taken into account, but that's a topic for another presentation. So, thank you very much for this. I hope you liked it.